In Los Angeles, Neil walks into a hospital and moves through several hallways until he reaches a rear exit. Dressed in a uniform, no one questions him. Once outside, he steals an ambulance. Meanwhile, Chris buys explosive devices at a construction store. Downtown, Michael picks up Wayne Grow using a stolen tow truck. Trejo is trailing an armored truck and updates the others about its location. Chris joins Neil inside the ambulance, and all 5 thieves mask up. Neil halts the ambulance mid-road, forcing the armored vehicle to stop. The tow truck rams it, causing it to roll violently. The armored truck finally crashes into cars parked at a dealership. As one of the guards calls for help, the crew sets explosives to blow open the rear of the armored truck. The blast shatters nearby windows and cars. They then force the 3 guards out, and Chris rifles through envelopes in the safe until he finds the one they need. Knowing police are close, Trejo places a spike strip across the road. Wayne Grow loses patience when the guards keep moving, unaware they're disoriented from the explosion. In frustration, he kills one with a headshot. Another tries to reach for a weapon, but is also gunned down. He then aims at the third, and after getting the nod from the others, executes him as well. Once Chris has the correct envelope, the team climbs back into the ambulance. As Trejo drives, the others change clothes in the back. The police soon arrive, but several vehicles hit the spike strip and crash, blocking the rest. As officers search the neighborhood on foot, the crew abandons the ambulance nearby, rigged with explosives. They escape in a second car, just as the bomb detonates, destroying evidence. That evening, Neil meets with Nate, who handles their money laundering. Inside the stolen envelope are hundreds of millions in bearer bonds belonging to Malibu Equity and Investments, owned by corrupt tycoon Roger Van Zandt. Neil plans to demand a ransom from Roger to get the bonds back. Nate also tells Neil about a $10 million job from someone named Kelso. Neil agrees to meet him. Meanwhile, Detective Vincent arrives at the robbery site and starts investigating. They've identified the stolen vehicles and where they were taken from, but lack other leads. A homeless man overheard the robbers and recalls the name Slick, but he didn't see any faces. By analyzing the scene and debris, Vincent deduces they're dealing with professionals. Later, Neil joins the team at a diner for a meal. Wayne Grow tries defending his actions during the robbery, but Neil smashes his face into the table, reminding him that killing security makes things worse. Outside, Neil continues beating him and almost kills him before noticing a passing police car. They wait for the car to leave, but when they look around, Wayne Grow has vanished. They search the area but can't find him. Later, when Chris returns home, his wife Charlene realizes he didn't bring back as much cash as promised. They argue, and Chris breaks items in anger, confessing he used some of the money to pay off his gambling debts. Charlene tries explaining his addiction, but Chris tells her to leave if she can't handle it. When their kid starts crying, Chris storms out. The next day, Vincent and a colleague raid a chop shop and pressure the owner, a known informant. After threats, the man tells them his brother will meet Neil in a Koreatown club with a possible lead. Meanwhile, Neil meets Kelso to hear about the proposed job. Kelso explains that the main Far East National Bank downtown handles physical cash for regional branches and sometimes holds over $10 million. Neil is wary due to fast-triggered alarms, but Kelso promises to hack and disable them 15 minutes before the hit. Neil agrees to the job. Meanwhile, Nate contacts Roger to arrange a meeting. Back at Neil's place, he finds Chris asleep. Neil calls Charlene to let her know where her husband is and then brews coffee. Chris vents about his marital issues, and Neil suspects Charlene might be cheating, though Chris denies it. Neil shares news of their upcoming operations. Later, Neil calls Roger from a payphone to arrange a meeting at a drive-in theater. Before that, Neil sees Charlene exiting a motel with another man. Furious, he storms into the room and corners her. Charlene insists it was business, but Neil doubts her and warns her to give Chris one last shot. Otherwise, Neil will deal with him personally. That night, Vincent visits the Koreatown club and meets the informant's brother, who tells him a known heist man has recently resurfaced. Vincent is about to leave when the man remembers the nickname Slick. Pressing further, Vincent gets the name Michael, prompting the team to dig into his background. At the drive-in, Neil meets Roger's intermediary, staying inside their vehicles. Suddenly, the second man sneaks up and tries to shoot Neil, but Chris, who's been hiding nearby, warns him in time. Neil sees the attacker in his mirror and reverses, crushing the man's leg. Chris opens fire, forcing the drop man to flee, abandoning his partner. The attacker tries to shoot Neil, but both Neil and Chris return fire and kill him. Michael finishes off the getaway driver. Neil checks the envelope and finds it filled with paper. Neil calls Roger to cancel the deal and vows revenge. That night, the crew has dinner with their families, unaware they're being watched by the police. The detectives recognize Chris and Michael, but not Neil. Elsewhere, Wayne Grow kills a sex worker in a motel room, revealing himself as a serial killer. Later, Vincent comforts the victim's devastated mother at the crime scene. A few nights later, Vincent and his men stake out a metal depository. Michael climbs a utility pole to shut off the alarm while Neil keeps watch. Chris breaks the lock and enters. He tries opening the safe, but when a cop inside the surveillance van accidentally makes a sound, Neil reacts instantly, rushes in, and aborts the mission. They leave without taking anything. Vincent orders his team not to arrest them. He wants to catch them on a bigger charge. The next day, Vincent's team interrogates Charlene's lover, hoping for information. Meanwhile, Neil suspects the police are tapping their phones and decides they should lay low. But Chris needs money and convinces Neil to go ahead with Kelso's plan. They go to a shipyard to scout locations while cops secretly observe them. Once the criminals leave, the police try to determine what the target is, but find nothing of value in the area. Vincent realizes it's a decoy. On a crane, Neil photographs all the detectives. That night, Neil meets Nate, who briefs him on the cops' identities and gives Kelso's blueprints. Neil deems it worth the risk. Meanwhile, Vincent boards a surveillance helicopter that eventually locates Neil. He switches to a car and follows Neil, who pulls over to avoid suspicion. Surprisingly, Vincent invites him for coffee. They sit at a diner and discuss how their work affects their lives. Vincent admits he doesn't enjoy killing, but will do it to protect innocence. Neil replies that he won't hesitate to shoot if it comes to that. The next day, Vincent learns the crew vanished without a trace. In reality, they're preparing for the heist at the bank's parking garage. Simultaneously, Wayne Grow approaches Roger with a proposal. Later, Neil, Chris, and Michael spot Donald, an ex-con friend of Neil's now working in a diner. When Trejo calls to say the cops are on his tail and he can't participate, Neil offers Donald his spot, and Donald eagerly accepts. He quits his job by shoving his boss. Later, Neil, Michael, and Chris infiltrate the bank through different entrances. Chris subdues a guard while the others threaten the crowd, disarming more guards. Neil assures the hostages the money is federally insured, so nobody will lose anything. He takes the manager's key and uses it to access the vault. They begin filling bags with cash. At the precinct, Vincent gets a tip about the robbery and rushes to the scene. Michael and Donald leave the bank first. Chris and Neil follow and are spotted by police. Neil makes it to the getaway car, but Chris hesitates and opens fire at the detectives. Civilians scream and scatter while bullets fly. Michael fires from the car and chaos spreads. A bullet hits a cop in the neck, killing him even with a vest. Vincent rushes to help him. Chris jumps into the car and Donald drives away. Gunfire shatters the windows. Donald struggles with control as bullets blow out tires. Eventually, Donald is shot in the head and the car crashes. Neil, Michael, and Chris flee on foot but encounter more cops. A prolonged shootout ensues with heavy losses on both sides. Michael separates and Chris gets shot in the shoulder. Neil keeps firing, helping Chris escape to a grocery store parking lot. He shoots at officers while civilians run screaming. Vincent tries to help the crowd. Neil loads Chris into a car and they flee. Michael leads two detectives through a restaurant and across a fountain, taking a child for cover. Vincent sneaks behind and shoots Michael in the head, then returns the child to his mom. As the heist hits the news, Donald's girlfriend mourns, and Charlene realizes Chris is in deep trouble. Neil brings Chris to a doctor, who removes the bullet and treats him. Despite Chris's broken clavicle, Neil insists he doesn't rest long. Chris changes into clean clothes, and Neil tells him Nate will hide him until they leave town. Chris wants Charlene, but Neil insists she's a liability. At the same time, Charlene calls her lover for help escaping. Neil sneaks into Trejo's house and finds his wife dead and Trejo wounded. Trejo confesses Roger and Wayne Grove forced him to talk, threatening his wife. Neil kills Trejo out of mercy. He calls Nate to confirm Chris is safe and asks for Roger's address. Meanwhile, Vincent raids an apartment and attacks the man who tipped them off, learning the source was Wayne Grove. Neil infiltrates Roger's home and confronts him. Roger claims he doesn't know Wayne Grove's whereabouts, so Neil kills him. Charlene and her baby are taken to a safe house after her lover gives up info. Police want her to help capture Chris. She refuses, but they warn her she could lose her child. She agrees to call Chris and lure him into a trap. Neil stops at his girlfriend's place and asks her to flee with him. She realizes who he is and runs, but he catches her and promises everything will be okay. The next morning, he gives her money and tells her to go to his safe house. She refuses a goodbye kiss. Neil picks up his new identity documents from Nate and learns Chris went after Charlene. Feeling inspired, Neil visits his girlfriend again and makes an emotional plea about loneliness. She decides to go with him. That evening, Chris arrives where Charlene told him to go. She steps onto the balcony and, through a subtle gesture, warns him. Chris walks away pretending he's asking neighbors for help. Charlene lies to the police, saying it wasn't him. When officers stop Chris in a squad car and ask for ID, he gives them a fake one. They let him go. Vincent comes home and finds his stepdaughter unconscious in the tub after a self-harm attempt. He saves her and takes her to the hospital, waiting with his wife. While driving, Neil gets a call from Nate revealing Wayne Grove's location. After a pause, Neil changes direction and heads for a hotel. He asks his girlfriend to wait in the car and sneaks in via the back, calling Wayne Grove's room while disguised as room service. After stealing a uniform, Neil enters the lobby, rides the elevator, and wedges it open with a trash can. He pulls the fire alarm. Police watching the building spot him on camera and alert Vincent, who rushes to the scene. As hotel guests evacuate, Neil knocks on Wayne Grove's door while hiding his face. When Wayne Grove opens it slightly, Neil slams it in, beats him, and shoots him dead. A cop tries to stop him, but Neil overpowers him. Vincent arrives by helicopter and spots Neil's girlfriend alone in the car. He becomes suspicious and approaches. Neil exits and flees the other way, abandoning his lover. Vincent gives chase, and they reach the airport. During a standoff near the runway, Neil uses a plane's light to try spotting Vincent, but Vincent sees his shadow first and shoots him. As Neil dies, the two men share a final handshake.